Noah grew up in a wealthy family and was used to luxury. In his 25 years, he could afford a chic apartment in the center of the capital. But he lived in a large family house, had several cars, the latest models of phones, only branded things, vacationed in the most expensive establishments with a spectacular program. Despite the abundance of temptations and the sea of opportunities, the guy grew up simple but aware of the quality of services and products. Financial prosperity was achieved for the family by his father, Oleksandr. He had no connections, influential parents, or friends, but at one time the man managed to buy out part of the decaying factory. On the premises, he and his first faithful companion began to establish production, suffering setbacks, betrayal, and losses. But Alexander persevered toward his goal for the well-being of his family. He had seen many amazing things in his life, but his character was strong, and with the years and hardships he endured, his temper only grew steadier. Lily, Noah's mother, was a calm and sensible woman. She stayed out of her husband's company and enjoyed the life of mansion mistress. She supervised the servants, was a member of a charitable organization, and participated in various activities to improve the lives of the poor. Lily understood that she had no influence on Alexander, so she did not interfere in his affairs or express any wishes. At the insistence of the family, Noah received an excellent education. His father tried to control a lot in the life of his only child. He even found him a bride. Emily was the daughter of Alexander's companion. The girl grew up in the same conditions as her fiancé, but she thought less about her own prospects and hoped that with marriage, her financial situation would only change for the better. She liked to spend money without thinking about the consequences, even though she herself had a degree from the best university in the country. I only respect her candidacy out of respect for you, father, Noah replied to Alexandra. He had understood from childhood that it was not worth defying his parent. The boy is not used to the fact that he is an adult, an independent man, who has right to build a life according to his own wishes. One late evening, on his way back from another get-together with friends, Noah was driving along the bridge and noticed a homeless girl standing on the railing. Her intentions became clear to the boy at once. The guy was so frightened that he reacted too late. He did not have time to stop the car, as the stranger collapsed into the water without regret. Noah jumped out in panic. Seeing from a great height the bubbles on the surface of the water, he, without wasting another second, took off his jacket and jumped in after him. The guy didn't think about his life, his belongings, or the money that was in his purse. It could all go to waste. But that didn't scare him. Noah had taken swimming lessons as a child, so he had experience in such situations. It was his skills that saved both his and Hannah's lives. Even in the water, getting to her, the guy realized that she was pregnant. It was already a long time. From this thought, confused, he almost went to the bottom, but managed to go to shore and pull Hannah out. "Are you crazy? Why did you jump into the water with that belly?" Noah shouted, looking into the stranger's frightened eyes. She was silent and only put her arms around herself. Her teeth were chattering from the cold as the cold evening wind was blowing on the young people. The boy realized that there was no point in yelling at the girl who wanted to kill herself now. He went over to Hannah and started rubbing her hands together to warm her up. "I'm sorry. I had no right to swear at you. You need to go to the hospital. Let's go. I have a car nearby." "Don't go to the hospital." Hannah pushed her savior away too sharply, as if he could hurt her. She was still in shock over the fact that she had decided to voluntarily say goodbye to her life. Noah could not know how she felt at that moment, but he knew that he was now responsible for this beggar girl. He couldn't just leave her. "Okay, the hospital is cancelled, but I can take you anywhere, help you financially. Just tell me, it's not a problem for me." But Hannah still looked detached. She didn't want anything. She only asked for a ride to the dilapidated house, where she was temporarily sheltering from the weather because she had no place of her own. While Noah and Hannah drove to her house, the young woman looked out the window and wept quietly. The boy felt no dislike for her. He was so sorry to see her suffering. He did not know what prompted her to take such a terrible, desperate step. But Hannah was not homeless in the full sense of the word. She was not born in that position and did not strive for it by abusing alcohol or gambling. She didn't live alone in the dilapidated house, but with her faithful dog, who warned her at night of intruders entering her territory. It was difficult for the young woman to survive alone, for she was defenseless and had no weight in society. In front of the woman's house, Noah made one stop near the store and came out of there with 2 bags full of groceries and hygiene products, because the pregnant woman could use all that. You shouldn't have, she said, not understanding why there was so much sympathy in the young rich guy. She was afraid that he might be insincere with her, for she had already faced deception and bullying from those who gave her hope. At the end of the meeting, Noah managed to get Hannah to talk. What to say? I'm an orphan. I didn't know my father, and my mother died when I was 5. After the orphanage, I was hired as a cleaner. No one wanted me to go anywhere else. No one wanted to take responsibility for an orphan. They expected a catch. I met David in that institution. I fell for his tricks, but he turned out to be a swindler, said the woman with a heavy heart. The resentment was still fresh, and she could not remember those events indifferently. Under the pretext of exchanging my apartment with an additional payment, David tricked me, and I was left without a home and pregnant. He sold the apartment and disappeared with my money, and I was 3 months pregnant. I was immediately kicked out of work because now physical labor was forbidden, and no one wanted to pay maternity pay, and officially I was not arranged. So I decided to jump off the bridge. It was less painful for me and the baby. I know that I would not make it. I would not be able to raise my baby under these conditions. Is this life? Hannah finished, circling the space with her hands. Noah listened to his acquaintance with ill-concealed shock. He was confused, for despite his modern activities, he had never encountered destitute and deceived people to whom no one had compensated them. They pulled their own weight and survived as best as they could. The boy thought he would get relief and satisfaction from helping a needy person, which would ease their existence, at least for a little while. But he could not believe that anyone could live in such conditions. Such hopeless sadness came over Noah that he did not know how to encourage Hannah, whether his words would be understood correctly, whether they made sense, or whether she would take any support as a mockery. The guy understood one thing. A pregnant woman had no place in a dilapidated house, where she was in danger every minute from the collapse of another part of the building, or from other vagrants looking for a place to stay. Don't get mad, the boy began, but I want to offer you a place to stay, a real one. My mom funds shelters for people in a similar situation to yours. I can talk, she'll set it up. No, I don't have to. I don't want to change anything. You could get in trouble because of me, and that's the last thing I need, Hannah answered. She had long been used to relying on herself. She was afraid to trust a suspiciously kind stranger, even one who risked his life to jump off a bridge after her. I'm used to it here. I feel safe. Nothing to worry about. She tried to convince the guy to leave as soon as possible. Noah agreed with her, but did not forget the way of her dwelling. Now he was a frequent visitor to the ruins. At first Hannah chased him away and didn't want to make contact, saying that soon he would get tired of playing the good guy and stop his help. This is new for you. You got carried away playing savior, you know? She told the guy, insisting she was right. In a week or 2, you won't want to come here anymore, and I'll be waiting. Don't you understand? I don't want to get attached. I don't need your sympathy. I don't need friends. I won't leave even if you send me away. You can live in a shelter, in better conditions. I don't understand your stubbornness. Noah was indignant in response. Soon Emily found out about the groom's visit to the beggar and immediately suspected him of infidelity. They had never been close, and now Noah was constantly going somewhere, so the girl showed interest, having made an unexpected discovery. Emily was angry that her fiancé was hiding something from her, because she considered herself the most beautiful, the best and most attractive, so no guy willingly could refuse her. Then she decided to find out what made Noah cool to her, what connected him and the beggar. When the girl saw with her own eyes that he was visiting the pregnant beggar, she immediately decided that this child was Noah's. Not wanting to tolerate such an attitude to his person, Emily came to Oleksandr and began to blackmail him to break off the engagement if he would not deal with the secret affair of his son. The man was furious. He never imagined that his only son, his hire, would be foolish enough to get mixed up in such a story and tarnish his family's name with an affair with a homeless woman. He didn't entrust the showdown to a third party, but decided everything on his own to avoid publicity. Well, bastard, repeated Oleksandr as he made his way to the hovel of the shameless beggar who had seduced his son. The man caught Noah and Hannah together as they sat laughing together. There you are, lovebirds, he shouted as he crept up. The young people were frightened, and the woman immediately clutched at her stomach. "You filthy swindler! Get away from my son!" The man came to Hannah with frightened confidence. She began to worry that she might be hit. Oleksandr yelled at her, accusing her of seducing him for her own gain. Then she was weaving intrigues and interfering with his son's future by imposing responsibility on him for her child. Hannah was so stunned that for the first few minutes she just stared at the man who was yelling at her. A complete stranger was confidently accusing her of horrible things. "Don't talk to her like that, father. You don't know anything." Noah stood up for his friend. He was indignant at the cavalier manner in which his father handled things. "You always rush in without understanding. Who are you to accuse Hannah of anything?" Oleksandr wanted to object, but froze in place. He was standing close enough to Hannah to notice the large mole in the shape of a fuzzy heart on her neck. My God. He went pale, grabbed his heart, and staggered back. Noah and Hannah picked him up from both sides and held him in place. "Are you alright?" Hannah asked, sitting him down on the place prepared for it in her apartment. "Daughter," the man spoke softly, looking at Hannah with tenderness and remorse. "Is it really you? You are my daughter?" "What daughter am I to you?" Hannah decided that the man was not well at all, since he was beginning to get confused. "No, that's right. Don't be frightened, children. But you must know the truth," Oleksandr said with a guilty look. He began to remember the times of his youth, and his affair with the girl Megan. That was before Oleksandr went into business. We lived together, and she got pregnant with twins. Together we brought up our boy and girl, but a year of living together showed how different we are. That rushing to have children was a mistake. We parted quietly and peacefully. My son Noah stayed with me, and my daughter Hannah stayed with her. She had just the same birthmark on her neck. Memorable. Hannah immediately grasped her birthmark, realizing what had triggered Oleksandr's memories. "My wife Lily accepted my son as her own. She couldn't get pregnant herself, so she fell in love with you, my son, without looking back. Your mother promised that she would leave town, then we would never see each other again, but fate decided everything for us." "So are we brother and sister?" Noah asked, stunned. "That sounds like a delirium. You never talked about it. You never ever mentioned that I have a sister, and we have the right to know." Oleksandr repented to his children and apologized. They didn't know how to react to such news. When Hannah said that her mother's name was Megan, the man was convinced that he was not mistaken. Since then, Oleksandr did not prevent Noah and Hannah from communicating. The woman moved to her father's house, where she was accepted without fear or neglect. Her father and brother treated her well and happily babysat her newborn son. Hannah was happy to find a family and the sincere support of her brother, who really was a kind and responsive man. Noah reconciled with the family. The young people began to prepare for the wedding. They accepted each other's shortcomings, and the girl realized that she was not just jealous of her fiancé, she realized that she cared about him. The wedding promised to be the most expensive and lavish in a decade.